Muscatine City Council meeting. We're going to call the meeting to order. Fran, will you please do the roll call?
Councilmembers Raywalt.
Present.
Fitzgerald.
Present.
Natfig.
Present.
Saucedo.
Present.
Bynum. Harvey.
Present.
Spread.
Present.
6 present and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, Fran. Will you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. We're to our part on the agenda where we ask if there's anybody here that would like to speak about something that's not currently on tonight's agenda. Please take your place at the podium. Go ahead. Please state your name and address.
Travis Glenn, 2019 Crestline Drive.
Could you say that again, sir?
Travis Glenn, 2019 Crestline Drive. A small group of friends and I noticed this year that the Davenport City Council recognized Indigenous Peoples Day for the first time. We thought that sounded like a great idea, so we reached out to those with Native American ancestry in the Muscatine area. People were on board, so we started a petition to have Muscatine celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day as well. In about 4 days, we had 55 signatures, mostly via Facebook. I'll read that petition to you now. Every second Monday in October, the United States observes Columbus Day. The holiday celebrates the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus, who first arrived at the present-day Bahamas in 1492. Columbus Day was established as a federal holiday in 1934. President Franklin Roosevelt stated the day was to honor the promise which Columbus's discovery gave to the world of a new beginning in the march of human progress. There have been many long-standing efforts by the United States and other nations to hold up the notion that the day represents such advances. However, the land had been occupied by indigenous peoples, people that Columbus himself referred to as beautiful. Word spread that a new continent had been discovered, and Europe would soon begin colonizing the lands. Within 2 years, over half the native population perished. Columbus and his men sold many of the indigenous people into slavery. He brutally murdered those who did not abide. The exploitation continued as Europeans would enslave and murder entire populations of natives as they colonized the American continent. Recently, our friends in Davenport decided to rename Columbus Day as Indigenous Peoples Day, a holiday that celebrates the people who originally inhabited this great land. We believe that the city of Muscatine should take part in the movement to honor not only those who have inhabited the land before Europeans, but the remaining Native American residents of our city. We believe Muscatine is a beautiful, welcoming place of diversity. In this manner, President Roosevelt's vision of human progress can be rendered more authentic. We ask for your support in retracting the name of a man responsible for heinous crimes in hopes that we can move history forward. While the petition states that we replace Columbus Day, this is not actually fully possible because Columbus Day is a federal holiday. Nothing we do tonight can change that. But we can minimize its importance by celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day on the same day. We do not want to rewrite history, as some have claimed we are doing. We want to By study history
Indigenous
carefully
Peoples Day
and merely
on the same
celebrate.
day. We do not want to
Those that
rewrite
deserve to be
history,
celebrated.
as some have
So
claimed
I
we are
and
doing.
everyone that
We
signed
want
the
to
petition
by
study
celebrating
history
Indigenous
carefully
Peoples Day
and merely
on the same
motion that
day.
the second Monday in
We
October
do not want
those
to
that
rewrite
deserve to be
history.
celebrated as Indigenous Peoples Day in the city of Muscatine. Thank you. To whom may I present this petition?
Do you have a copy for
Yes.
council? You can give it to Councilman Spread. He can pass it around. Mr. Glenn, are there efforts on the national level to change Columbus Day as well?
Yes, there are actually several cities within the past 5 years or so that went in that direction. I'd estimate about 20 in 2017. I was looking at Wikipedia today. Iowa City has recently adopted it, and it's not on that list yet, but 2016 had quite a number. As you go back further, the numbers are smaller, but it's growing in popularity.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Please state your name and address.
My name is Matt Moody. I live at 511 West 7th Street. I'm sort of tagging on to what Travis was saying. He briefly outlined, some of the crimes that Columbus committed, but the things he's held responsible for positively are what I would more like to address. Columbus not only did not discover America, because of course there were already people here, he was not the first white European to land here. Leif Erikson beat him by over 400 years. Columbus did not prove the world was round. Eratosthenes did mathematically more than 2,000 years ago and actually was able to calculate fairly accurately the circumference of the globe using only what he could see. No scientific devices, just mathematics. And the fact that the world was round was a commonly accepted thing among the educated people of Columbus's own time. Also, I have a prepared statement from a friend of mine who could not be here tonight, Danny Zumwalt of 2011 Solomon Avenue. It says as follows: as a registered member of the Micmac First Nations tribe of Listagouche, Quebec, and a lifelong resident of Muscatine, I will say that this is not an attempt to denounce or erase history. This is simply our community evolving by making a conscious decision to honor the Native people to whom suffered a systematic genocide, rape, and torture that came with the man who did not, in fact, discover America, but was simply lucky and lost. This act, to me, is one of community. This is not to change what was done or condone victimization. This is to decide, as a community, who and why we celebrate on this day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Anyone else? Please state your name and address for council.
Roger Roth, Clark House. Quotation mark, all rights reserved without prejudice, UCC 1-308, quotation mark. We don't support breed-specific legislation. Research shows that bans on certain types of dogs are largely ineffective and often a waste of public resources, ... capital A. As an alternative, the breed-specific policy CDC recommends a community approach to prevent dog bites. And ultimately, we think that a much more promising way to build stronger communities of pets and pets owner. President B.H. Obama. The CDC recommends against using breed as a factor in dog bite prevention policy and states, quote, any dog of any breeds has the potential to bite, end quote. Centers for Disease Control. All capital letters on the first word. Resolved that the American Bar Association urges all states, territorial, and local legislative bodies and governmental agencies to adopt comprehensive breed-neutral, dangerous/reckless owner laws that ensure due process protection for owners, encourage responsible pet ownership, and the focus on the repeal of any breed discrimination or breed-specific provisions. The American Bar Association, House of Regents, 2012. Quote, pets are part of people's lives as opposed to restricting pets. We look for better residents. Most fears apartment operators have are myths, end quote. Eric Brown, Vice President of Marketing for MC Residential, an apartment management company in Arizona, Oklahoma, and Texas. Quote, we do not ask, nor do we care what breed of dog is owned by a person. So when we are writing homeowners insurance, rental insurance, or renewing policies, it is nowhere in our questions what breed of dog is owned, end quote. Heather Paul, Public Affairs Specialist, State Farm Insurance. The men that sat in the audience section in the third and final reading of the pit dog ordinance did not tell you that, 1, the pit dog ordinance is a blanket law. 2, that blanket law is a violation of the rights of the responsible dog owner. 3, such blanket legislation is the worst nightmare for any person enacting such a means of legislation, since it is a constitutional tort, color of law, or both. Those as defendants of such violation are those that prove as lawmakers and those who sign or otherwise approve of the same. This would be considered as the proverbial sorted amicus in such situations against those that are elected or otherwise appointed officials. 4, First Ward Fitzgerald proposed legislation to exempt dual breed pit dogs that caused the 5th Ward representative to finally vote for the measure. 5, the American Kennel Club sees only the Staffordshire pit dog as a pure breed. That means all other breed dogs under that amendment do not exist in the pit dog law. Even then, it is a constitutional violation to consider breed-specific or breed discrimination against this breed. 6, at the time of your considering the pit dog legislation, that A, the Commonwealth of Iowa, smallest state, smaller republic, told the lobbyists no to the same, and B, my research only showed a few insurance companies concerning about enactment of breed-specific or breed discrimination laws at the time of its appearance before City Council. Remember, there's only 4 or 5 guys representing 4 or 5 companies. 7, the lobbyists that wanted the City Council to pass legislation knew, A, that the breed-neutral ordinance passed by the city on 07 September 1995 is the means to go, and B, knew the reason for such legislation is profit margins. And C, that not all insurance agencies sided with them. D, no bother or concern as to whom got hurt legally in this process. 8, there is no state law promoting such breed-specific nor any breed discrimination laws. 9, the states are now seeing the need to enact laws that A, are against breed-specific breed discrimination laws, and B, promote the breed-neutral laws, one of which I've told you have. 10, it is also recommended that the responsible dog owner has a clause that allows their dog to protect them while also targeting the irresponsible and the criminal elements that opposed in the city's breed-neutral ordinance mentioned above. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. Anyone else? Please state your name and address.
My name is Ralph Burr, 3015 Allen Street, First Ward. I met at the last meeting here. I remember Greg told Fran that I sued the city. Well, Greg, did you fix the problem? I want to know.
You were compensated for the damage.
Will you pull your microphone up a little bit, please? Thank you.
I want to know if you fixed the problem out there on Dawson and Hauser, the lift station.
The Public Works Department will be bringing back a discussion item to City Council this fall or winter.
Did you tell the council not to talk to me when I come down here? Because it seems like they never talk to me when I'm up here. Greg, did you tell them not to talk to me?
No, sir.
Then they can talk to me tonight. I left some pictures here the last time I was here. So what have you got to say about the pictures I've left? You're free to talk. He said you could talk, so let's talk. What would you
Mr.
do
Burr,
if...
you got the pictures back, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
But what if that was your kid's basement or your mom and dad's? What would you do? Would you say, I don't not say a word to the city? It's been going on for 25 years. It's a Public Works Department problem, too, because they're in charge of the sewer system. So when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to them, too, see? You don't have nothing to say about the pictures? I'm surprised. Well, Phil, you're First Ward. What have you got to say? What is your job and duties called for since you're First Ward?
Well, I have been working with Public Works over the years to try to get something accomplished out there.
I know it. Nothing's been done.
I'm one guy.
Scott, what about you? What's your job and duties setting on this council?
I'm anxious to hear their recommendations, just like, well, I can't say just like the others, but that's what I'm waiting for.
Santos, what's your job and duties on this council?
So I'm challenged a little bit by what your approach is. You came in and
You're supposed to...
So I'm asking my question first. You were compensated for insurance damages on your home, correct?
Not enough to cover it.
Not enough to cover, but you
But that don't solve the problem.
When
It's a
was
problem
that, Mr. Burr?
Huh?
When was that?
probably 4 years ago now.
Okay.
4?
Yeah.
Has the damage occurred again?
No, not yet, because we haven't had that heavy of a rain.
Okay, so we have it on the agenda to move forward. Okay?
Yeah, what
When
do you think
When
it-
you come in already being aggressive the way you are right now, you're not gonna get somebody that's gonna wanna work with you. We've requested for it to move forward, and that's what we're gonna do. So
Well,
I encourage you to understand that we can't fix it in 1 minute. You see how much the CSO projects, they take almost a year before we can get them done. Your situation is something that we have to get the information from the Public Works before we can just say, go fix it.
Well, this has been going on for over 25 years, not just lately.
So I understand. I've only been in the council for 2 years.
I know it.
Okay, so please, drop it down a few notches and understand that
I understand it's
difficult
been
for
going
me.
on a long time.
Yeah, but I like, you talk, everybody else comes down here and you talk and talk about everything, but I never hear you talk about the sewer system out there.
Well, again, we are working on it. It's on the agenda, and I'm telling you, we're not gonna sit here and just let it go by.
All right, appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks,
you.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Burr.
What's the earliest we can have the report from Public Works?
I don't see Brian here tonight.
I think we were shooting for November, Jim.
Ralph, you might want to hang around. Jim's going to talk a minute about this.
Wow, look at that. It's just falling apart.
I knew that was gonna happen.
All right, Mayor, Council, I obviously do not know that date for a fact. I do know that, and Brian is out of town. Brian Simon, the Public Works Director. But I do know that he is working on it, and I do believe that Mr. Monsager is right, that it's sometime in November. But I would be remiss if I did not say this is not easy at all.
I think that's why it's went on so long, because nobody's been able to figure out what to do.
Yes, I would agree with that.
But I can still feel Mr. Burr's frustration when it affects you personally. It's hard to let that time go by. Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Jim, who did you say was working on it?
Brian Stein.
Brian? Oh,
Brian.
okay.
Yeah, the Public Works Director, Brian Simon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
So,
Anyone?
in November, Ralph, is what we're looking at.
Getting information.
So, come back sometime by the end of November if we don't see something. then
If you
can come back.
remember, a couple months ago, Mr. Burr came and said, I'm going to come to every council meeting.
I know that.
So
That's what I'm just saying.
you're
He said
following up on your
end of
word.
November. We see that.
Sorry, ma'am. Please say your name and address.
I'm Linda Smargy, and I live at 1010 Acorn Lane. And I would like to reinforce what my neighbors Travis and Matt had to say about Indigenous Peoples Day. I would like to strongly encourage the city to consider recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day in Muscatine. Would the council please make a motion to recognize our diverse population in Muscatine?
Council cannot make a motion tonight. It has to be placed on the agenda and provided 24 hours in advance.
Can it be on the agenda for the next meeting?
That's up to city council.
I would be more encouraged to just get some more information. I mean, we saw 55 signatures. I'm unaware of what you're saying. I am very interested in your diversity and the points that you're saying. However, it's difficult for me to just make a motion without getting some information to back that up. So I'd like to see something from maybe Travis or your team to be able to provide something for us, Travis, and then be able to get some more information before I make a motion of that kind. But I am interested in hearing that.
Okay, thank you.
I should also mention, I got some phone calls today from the other side after they heard that it might come forward today, just for a point of information.
Okay.
Travis, you have my email, correct? Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot there.
Thank you, Mrs. Margie. Anyone else tonight? Hearing nothing, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda, number 5. The following items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes items 6A, items 8A through C, items 12A through E, and tonight's bills totaling $5,967,202.10.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Scott? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries with all ayes. Moving on down to number 7, we have a couple of public hearings tonight. The first public hearing concerns a proposed rezoning request for the proposed Oak Park Development Project in the city of Muscatine. The developer is requesting the rezoning of approximately 10 acres of real estate located at the corner of Blaine Street and Isaac Avenue from single-family residential to RL large-scale residential development. Prior to any formal action by City Council, a public hearing is required. Now is the time for the public to comment. Please state your name and address.
My name is Chris Ailes. My address is 1101 West 9th Street in Davenport. I am the project manager for Oak Park Development. We are requesting that the council rezone our site. We will be retaining the same density that's currently allowed. Our request is simply that we be allowed to build triplexes in lieu of single-family homes on this site. Our typical tenant will be over 55 with their annual income of approximately $30,000, retired on Social Security with a modest pension. About a fourth of our apartments will be occupied by individuals with incomes that qualify for Section 8 vouchers, but again, they will be over 55, subject to the same criminal, credit, and reference checks as all of our residents, and subject to the same lease that ensures for the quiet enjoyment of our other residents and in turn our neighbors. I understand that the neighbors don't want change on this site, and a number of them don't want this project, but the fact remains that this project is addressing a need that's identified in the city's market study, and it's consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. I believe the city staff has adequately addressed the impact of the Section 8 vouchers on property values in the packets that were distributed to the council members. And I have assembled a qualified team that has responded to the city staff and the neighbors' constructive comments. We've revised our plan as summarized in the staff's packets to all of the council members, addressing a number of the issues that have been raised. And we are committed to continue to do so through the final plan. In closing, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So you reached out to the actual neighbors in that district or in those homes, I would say, that were there?
Door to door.
Yes, a few weeks ago I went door to door and contacted several of them, realizing that some of them might not have been home, and also following up on some of the comments from those that I met with in person. We later then held a meeting there at Oak Park.
So how many, if you would say percentage-wise, would you feel that you communicated your plan to?
I believe that I probably talked to half of them,
Yeah.
at least half of them that were on the list of the mailing list, and a few others that were not on that list that did come to the meeting.
And from the 50% that you communicated to, you got constructive feedback of what you felt was going to be improving the site better than what you had initially had presented?
Yes, and I guess to go through it, I think the city staff did a pretty good job of talking about some of those changes, but briefly.
Especially for the public that hasn't seen the.
Okay. The original site plan had 3 entrances on Blaine Street. We cut that back to 2 entrances. We lowered the elevation on the west side of the property to flatten the site a little bit, reduce some stormwater issues, and also shifted the the homes to the east, creating a larger buffer along the west side. We've committed to leaving an existing lane that those folks on Fifth Avenue have used to access their backyards in place, and so shifted our buffer a little bit east to accommodate that. We listened to a number of the neighbors that had specific requests on the type of barrier, landscape barrier they would like in their backyards. Some preferred pine trees, some preferred shade trees. So we've demonstrated that we're open-minded to that.
And of the percentage that you communicated with, do you feel that you left with them in a positive manner of saying they were in agreement of this expansion? Or obviously there are probably some that you mentioned that were not wanting change at all?
Yeah, yes. I believe on our meeting Saturday that a number of them left feeling comfortable that we were attempting to address their concerns. But I believe there's still that element that they just don't want anything there. And I understand that, but that's something I can't deal with. And the site's zoned
So
currently.
currently it's zoned to be able to have single-family residentials. The way I think I read it in those, it was like a rent-to-own, my understanding, to have up to what, 48 or sites, is that correct, Andrew? Correct. And you're
believe-
proposing how many?
The same density. And that's why, as I started, the impact or the effect of our request to rezone the property doesn't change the density that could be allowed on that site based on the current zoning. It simply allows us to build triplexes instead of single-family homes. And I believe that's actually better for everyone because it creates fewer but larger green spaces.
How many triplexes would that be in total?
16.
16 versus 48. Okay.
Any questions?
Mr. Ailes?
Yes, sir.
In the material, it said that Mr. Fitz was going to buy the land. It was contracted.
Brian Fritz.
Well, it said Fitz.
Yes, that's a typo, I believe, or misspelling. It's
No wonder
Fritz.
I couldn't find Mr. Fitz.
And Brian Fritz is the owner of Pioneer Property Management, and he will also be and they manage Cottage Grove, and they manage the Welch, and they will also own and then manage this project.
Makes sense now, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Ailes? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to close this hearing?
I think there's somebody in the back that wants to
Oh,
talk.
sorry. Come on up. Please say your name and address.
Let's see. The name's Denny Jens, 2219 Fifth Avenue. And, we've listened to Chris regarding his development, and as a project manager, we think he's come up with a good plan. We just don't think it's the right place for it. We realize it's R3 now, and you mentioned it too, and he recently mentioned rent to own.
Well, I think
R3
that's what-
rent
that's
to
what I
own.
s-
What's rent to own?
That's what I was interested when I saw that on the plan.
Yeah.
So go ahead, if you want to go ahead, you want to get that addressed first?
Hold that off.
Go ahead.
As a group, we met the Saturday before at Oak Park, and the same group went, I think, back for Chris's meeting.
Okay.
When we met, everybody came to the consensus that what we would like to see there, if we can have a field, as it is, it's awesome. We got a lot of wildlife that lives out there, and it's good. It's a good thing. But we see the need, and I looked at the plan the comprehensive plan and some of the surveys that were taken, and we believe it'd be better served if it was developed with condos and single house dwelling type homes, similar to what you see next to Sunnybrook. When you look over at Hauser, what was done across the street from the West Side Store, there's nice little homes there. There's a demand. 64% of the people that were surveyed about senior housing said, I'm looking for, in the future, condos and single home ownership. That's a big percentage. And I think a developer could look at that and see there's an opportunity. And right now, that whole area there is very residential, and we like to see it stay that way. That being said, everybody there stepped up to sign a petition that we'd like to stay zoned R3. I respectfully submit that for your consideration. Oops. See if I got my third page. Here we go.
So,
There's 36 people that signed this that are local owners. And 95% of these people that signed this are lifetime residents of Muscatine, Iowa. We've lived here all our lives, paid taxes, and we like to see residential stay residential. And we feel it will help our
Isn't
ownership.
it staying residential in either case?
Well, residential R3.
You want owner occupied, you don't?
We want owner occupied. We already have, there's a lot of rentals in our area, and those are fine, but you throw 48 more rentals. We just think it's going to affect the house values. That's our single biggest asset we have as individuals, is our homes. So we feel like it's going to take away from the values. And we just feel like there's an opportunity there for a developer to look at that land in a different way. And I think it could be more positive.
You have no objection to the density in either event?
In either event. But we think, just like you see over there in by Sunnybrook, those are very nice places, and they can be, you can design them down to fit the target. I think the target was $180,000 to $200,000 homes or more, what people are looking for today. And that would fit over there. You could do you could do twin homes, condo-like setups, and have some singles in there, just like you over at Sunnybrook.
The condos over by Sunnybrook all exceed 200,000.
Yeah, I'm saying downsize them a little bit, and you can do it for less. Those recently in Sunnybrook have shot way up in price, and they're really not changing them much. They just see a value of, but that's my biggest concern here is the R3 situation and how the opportunity that could be recognized by the right developer that is more focused on residential as R3.
Thank you, Mr. Jens.
but Mr. Jens, in your petition that you have there, how many of those did you mention that were actually neighbors of this property or adjacent to this property?
All the adjacent property owners, except for two. There was one that signed that we took off, and I made an asterisk at the bottom of page 3.
Okay.
And one other adjoining property owner that he just doesn't care, but everybody else is against it. I think there's just two that haven't signed it that's adjoining.
That's adjoining. The rest of them are just property owners from across the
From the Par 4 edition.
Most all of them are over there.
Okay.
Yeah, they're Devitt, or excuse me.
Fairway.
They're ISID Fairway and Fifth Avenue.
Webster.
And Blaine. And actually, if in any case when that's developed, Blaine Street is so narrow and it's fallen apart. That street just isn't going to support. It'd have to be a major improvement in the infrastructure of that road.
I would clearly agree with that. Any development that happens there, Blaine Street needs to be.
Yeah, not just curbs and sidewalks. The street needs to be widened. When I go down that street and somebody else is coming up, you both think you're going to go in the ditch. You go real slow, and if somebody's walking on it,
Forget about it.
well, you drive like 5 miles an hour just so you don't upset, scare them. Or,
Sure.
people walk their dog out there, and we all do. And we just want it to stay safe. And the sidewalks will help, but the road is deteriorating. They just fixed Fifth Avenue going down the hill, but Blaine Street's actually worse than that was. But you couldn't widen it without filling the ditches. The ditches are deep. So you don't, I think that's a concern. And with this development, they want to do 2 roads in and out. And, there's just a lot of things that scare me about that.
But you feel more comfortable with 48 single homes?
I don't think it'd be 48 single homes, quite frankly. That's the worst case scenario.
That's the max.
Yeah, I mean, that's the maximum that could go on there, rent to own, whatever that is.
I know.
But,
I don't know that.
but if somebody develops that and puts in $200,000 condos, or 250, I think it'd still fit a market need. But clearly, when, in the survey that I was reading, there's not a whole lot said about the apartment need for rentals. It's more focused on seniors are looking for, 64% of them are looking for condos or smaller homes that they can own. And those folks that don't find that are tending to go somewhere else. Right now, we don't have a lot of that in Muscatine, except for Sunnybrook, where it's 350 now. But anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I hope folks can see our way.
I'd like to hear from Mr. Ailes if he could give us some information on this.
Okay.
Mayor, Council, just 2 quick clarifications on the R3 district. It has nothing to do with rent to own. The R3 districts are standard single-family district, 7,000 minimum lot size. About 80% of the cities develop that in about 7,000 square foot lots. The other point would be is under the current zoning, condos would not be permitted on this property without rezoning.
So say that again?
Only single-family
Only
homes,
single-family. So
not
con-
condos.
So condos couldn't even be on there?
No.
Not without rezoning.
To rezone to what?
Yeah, rezone to what? Are we back to
To
RL?
RL?
RL, you could also do R4, 5, or 6.
Which is, I'm not even gonna try to get
But
into that.
R4 is single family and 2 families, then R5 and 6 is single family through multi-family residential. Those would be the other choices that you'd have to
Which is
develop
almost
condos.
identical to what he's suggesting. If you're saying double 2 families or 3 families.
Yeah, no, there's zoning districts to accommodate it. However, the point is the current zoning would not.
Current zoning is only single-family homes,
That's correct.
up to 48 on that area.
I'd like to hear.
Well, technically, it's 7,000 square feet. How you get 48 is when you put in the required right of way, then leave a half acre for
Okay.
drainage ditches. A creative engineer could probably squeeze a few more in there.
Okay.
48 is probably reasonable.
Thank you, Andrew. Did you want to add something?
I want to add, since we talked about this, the rent to own, and he brought up the issue, the point that there's other designations as far as R3 or RL. I respectfully say, or request, that we consider those changes so that condos are a possibility, so a developer can look at it and say, I can put condos and single homes in there. So
Your basically what you're saying is you want them to be owner occupied.
Yep, yes.
Okay.
That's what the signatures are about. We want owner occupied. We prefer just open land.
Sure.
But we understand the value proposition here for everyone. And we think the condo side / single houses, a mixture of that in there would be a better fit for the Muscatine. And still, if there's things that we can offer as a city, like the abatements, put that on that piece of land, say, developers, if you're interested, this is available, single housing, condos, and we'll offer abatement.
Okay.
And
Thank
see
you.
who jumps up.
Thank you. Mr. Ailes, did you want to say a couple words to Santos?
Yes, I'd like to hear.
I guess I'd clarify from my perspective that R3, we have, I think, reached an understanding that the density's there. R3 would allow anyone, myself or anyone else, to build 48 single-family homes and rent them. So I don't believe that R3 restricts the development to owner-occupied. We have 2 access points. Mr. Jens talked about being a little concerned with the 2 access points. Again, back to R3, if someone were to develop homes along Blaine Street, you could have private drives, many more than 2, right along Blaine Street. So I think from many perspectives, what we're proposing, although it's not what they want, which is an open field, it's better than many of the alternatives.
Thank you. Jane, did you want to come up? Please state your name and address for folks at home.
Jane Doffelt, 2223 Fifth Avenue, and I'm an adjacent landowner, along with my sister who is in California. And we spoke last night. Some of the points that I'd like to make in favor of having the RL are that it will always be developed as it is proposed. It gives the landowners next door some right in some of the development because of the way it has to be developed. With 48 or whatever optimal size a creative engineer can make on getting housing, we would still have 48 different people that would be living in my backyard and their backyard on the adjacent landowners, with the property developed as senior apartments. We would have one landlord that we would have to contact for any nuisance abatements like snow removal or anything that, you know, we do a good job in our neighborhood of policing each other because there's a lot of competition on how good your yard looks and how well everything is maintained. But with 48 smaller homes that were owner-occupied and not having a maintenance person to take care of their yards or their mowing or anything like that, that's going to be one drawback that I think will happen. The other is, in my former position, I worked with several developers in trying to get different types of housing in Muscatine. And Chris was one of them when he did the Welch Apartments. And he took a pigeon-infested, mutated pigeon-infested building and turned it into really unique senior housing. And I believe that he's trying to work with the neighborhood and meeting some of the needs that we would like to see with the development of the RL with the senior housing. I may be the only one, and I may be the thorn under somebody's saddle tonight, but after speaking with my sister, I think these are some of the major points. There's no surprises with RL development. There are surprises if you have individuals going in with separate lots or things, you know, that are smaller. I don't know how many houses were put in the Steamboat area when they first went in, but those didn't sell right away. And then I think some of those lots were bought by a developer for the condos. I do like those developments for the condos too. I don't want to lose a buffer. I think that the senior housing development gives us a buffer rather than 2 stories. This is 1 story. The condos, if they're 2 stories or 1 story. The one thing that I think that can be addressed is probably the idea of what you as a city would do for the rest of Blaine Street if it's developed, no matter whether it's Chris or somebody else that would come in. Because it's going to look a little silly to have a gap between 4th Avenue and 5th Avenue on Blaine without curbs and gutters if you require curbs and gutters. There's also no curbs and gutters on 4th Avenue between Blaine and Webster. So that would need something like that also. I guess I'd like to know what would happen if the funding is not awarded in the go-round this year. If it does move to RL, will the RL stay or will it revert back to R3? And if there's, I guess, if you could answer that, Chris, or do you know?
Andrew
Is it
can.
Andrew? Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Stoffel.
Mayor, Council, so under the RL district, if it doesn't happen within a year and they don't apply for an extension, then the zoning does revert. And the other point while I'm up here on zoning I want to make is that there is no zoning tool that you can restrict something to owner occupied only, that's not something that can be done.
And there would be nothing in the RL zoning that restricts, so you could build condos there. I mean, you could build what he's proposing to build and they could be condominiumized. Is that right?
That's correct.
And am I correct, the housing study that was recently done does call out a need for affordable housing for seniors?
Actually, affordable senior.
Yeah.
Senior, multifamily, residential, a number of housing. Andy, can you also mention that this is not the final step, that there's 2 other steps?
Right, and so just kind of, with the RL zoning districts really are 2, potentially 3-step process. So this is what's the basic zoning, then the outline development plan, then there's also a preliminary and final development plan where essentially it goes back, where it comes back with substantially more details, and that's outlined, but those details are in the memos, specifically, the exact rating plan, building elevations, and all that goes back, public hearing, Planning and Zoning Commission, then council. Then there's a final development plan, but often that's combined with the preliminary. So this would not be the last bite at the apple, so to speak.
Thank you, Andrew. Please.
Kurt Zimmerman. I'm here representing my mother, Bonnie Zimmerman, at 2402 Isaac Avenue, since I'm the caretaker of the property now since Dad has passed. We've known for years something's going to happen with that. If I had my way, I would have owned it by now, but that hasn't happened. I guess I would like to know what the city is going to be willing to do to make this project proper, as far as stormwater runoff, situations like that. Because our farm's on the downhill side of everything. Heavy rainstorms, we have seen water gutter high coming down Isaac Avenue. No catch basins. Everything runs into our front yard on our property. There are catch basins on the east side of Isaac Avenue, which I've put my laser grate on, and they are 3.5 inches higher than the west side of the road. They never see a drop of water, yes, and no curbs. And I asked why there was curbs and gutters on the uphill side and not the downhill. And they tried to convince me that there were curbs and gutters there before it was paved, and I've been there for 49 years. I know the neighborhood. It was a tar and chip road. It was county then. So that's one situation. There's no stormwater management. Retaining wall on the north side of our driveway washed out 4 years ago during a heavy rainfall because of all the stormwater coming down Isaac. I went to the city. They said they'd look at it. 4 years later, every time I ask, you're on the list. So there are some major stormwater issues there that need to be looked at. Okay. Is the city willing to look at these and make the infrastructure improvements to protect my future property?
To answer your question, my understanding is with this proposal, Andrew, we're still going to have another engineering plan that the developer is going to look at, and that this, because I knew we talked about this previously at the last meeting.
We did.
Mayor, Council, that's correct. So, talking about this being the 2-step process, that the fully engineered and reviewed drainage plan would come with the next.
The drainage plan is going to be proposed. Right. Obviously, in the end, they're not gonna want their homes on the other side if that was gonna be what we've moved to, and it be potentially washed out or some sort of water. So go ahead.
Does that answer your question?
No.
Okay.
Because right now, on the heavy rains, water comes down Blaine Street, around onto Isaac, a block down Isaac, into our front yard. I hate to think how many millions of oak leaves I clean up every time it rains in the fall that get washed down.
Is it your belief that the residential development is gonna somehow increase that risk?
No, but the problem is there.
Yeah, it has been for 49 years at least, right?
No, not till the street got paved. At the bottom of Blaine Street, there was a 4-foot by 4-foot culvert to catch rainwater and shot it straight east to Mad Creek. When the road got paved during the bypass project, they filled it full of concrete.
Okay.
Did away with it.
We removed a culvert.
A big culvert.
So,
And now the catch basins they put in for the storm sewers, like I said, are on the uphill side to where they never have a drop of water in them. There's some issues there that need looked at. I know there's several retention ponds on the plan that are gonna control as much as possible, but there's still an issue there, especially now if you're gonna be putting in curbs and gutters and there's more potential runoff from concrete.
we don't know that yet, but that's what we're.
So,
So I think.
I mean, I guess is the city gonna step in, or is it just gonna be same old, same old?
No, because I mean, I think even if we were to look at that, we're still gonna be addressing the street. I mean, if Blaine Street needs to be reviewed, there's gonna have to be something that needs to be done.
And even down Isaac.
There's
Yeah.
a culvert that was removed, and obviously you're bringing some things to attention that we weren't aware of.
One of the neighbors has video of storm. Water is to the top of the curb coming down Isaac Avenue. And with the amount of traffic on that street, it's dangerous. In fact, 20 years ago, heavy rainstorm, I was there in my building. And I think it was the old city administrator come down off the bypass. His car flooded out and stalled right there in front of the house and had to come up to the shop to use the phone because he wasn't going to make it into work. And I've had...
How about we go ahead and put that on for the future in November, as far as that discussion piece again?
And I guess maybe 4 years ago, I should have went to the city and then came here.
And that's fine.
But Randy Howell, I've known him forever. I figured, all right.
Yeah. Well, you
But
brought
being
it to our
told, I'm on the
attention,
list,
so
I'm
we
on the
will-
list,
you're
I'm on the list.
We have to
After
think
4
Mr. Burr.
years.
Mr. Burr's on the
Be
list
on the
too.
list too, so we will.
Mr. Zimmerman?
Yeah.
You said they filled in that culvert. Who was they?
Whoever the contractor was that did the bypass project
Oh, wow, that was a long time.
many years ago. Yeah.
They just wandered down there and filled it full of concrete?
Well, they paved all the way to Lake Park, I think, at that point in time. They redid all that, put in curbs, and, because that was pretty much just a tar and chipped road forever. So,
Okay.
so yeah, there was some things done wrong there way back when. And I guess now, I mean, if something like this is gonna happen, things need to be rectified.
Yeah, we have it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Hearing nothing else, do I have a motion to close this public hearing?
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries with all ayes. We have another public hearing tonight that concerns a proposed annexation request from White Distribution and Supply. A voluntary annexation request has been filed for a 4.18 acre parcel of land and 6.68 acres of adjoining right-of-way for a total of 10.86 acres and the 3900 block of Park Avenue West. White Distribution and Supply currently operates a business on this parcel that adjoins the proposed annexation and is acquiring the 4.18 acres to construct a new building and expand their operations. Because they need city services, they're requesting this annexation of the 4.1 acres as well as the 6.68 acres of the adjoining right-of-way. Prior to any formal action by council, a public hearing is required. Now is the time for the public to comment. Hearing nothing,
Move
do
to
I have a
close.
motion to close?
Move to close.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Mr. Jens? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries with all ayes. Mr. Jens, if you want to, you have to come up here. Otherwise, our folks at home can't hear.
This might be a stupid question, but when you say your motion to close, you're not voting, you're just closing.
No, this is closing the public
Closing the
hearing
public
part of this issue.
Okay.
There'll be more.
Okay, so will you guys be voting tonight on the zoning?
Yes, we are.
Item B.
Yes, you'll follow it.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on tonight's agenda then, we're on 11A. We have the second reading of an ordinance. Presented for City Council's consideration is the second reading of an ordinance amending Title VII, Chapter 9, Section 4, to extend the downtown parking zone. As part of the Come and Go construction project, the city has acquired 19 new parking spaces on Sycamore Street between 4th and 5th Streets. The proposed amendment would change parking on Sycamore Street on both sides from Mississippi Drive to 4th Street to Mississippi Drive to 5th Street. Is there a motion to approve the second reading of the ordinance as submitted?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Councilman Spread, how do you vote?
Aye.
Saucedo?
Aye.
Harvey?
Aye.
Raywalt?
Aye.
Nat Big?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
The motion carries with all ayes. Moving on to B. We have the first reading of an ordinance rezoning the real estate in the city of Muscatine from R3 residential to RL large-scale residential development for the proposed Oak Park development project. Is there a motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor. Considering all the input from the neighbors and the developer and the city, sitting here thinking like I was a neighboring homeowner, in my opinion, I would rather have maybe the development as proposed by Mr. Ailes, where you have 48 senior citizens living in triplexes, rather than deal with the possibility of 48 single-family condos where you have really no control of who the owners or occupants of those condos might be, or the possibility of maybe up to 48 single-family residences, again, without any really control over who the owners or occupants might be. In either case, or any time that area is developed, there's going to be the Blaine Street issues and probably by implication down on the Isaac Avenue area. So no matter, I guess, what this is zoned, those issues would remain. I guess the bottom line is, if I was a neighbor, I'd rather have senior citizens as neighbors, knowing that they probably would be pretty passive neighbors, rather than getting maybe a family in there that had a bunch of kids, and who knows the disturbance they might make to the neighborhood. So I am really in favor of trying to proceed with this RL large-scale development, with the knowledge that Mr. Ailes would be putting in senior housing.
Thank you, Councilman Harvey. Any other discussion?
Comment, maybe if Andrew could go back up one more time, just for clarification here, because this is, if it were to be the individual homes, could their setback be closer to the existing neighbors than under Mr. Ailes' proposal?
Yes, substantially. In his proposal, it's set back, I believe, about 120 feet. Under the R3 zoning, that would be 25 feet, would be what the zoning ordinance requires.
Was that made clear to the neighbors too? I'm just want to make sure that.
You can just
This is
nod,
kind
Mr. Ailes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
I do have a question as well on, not for you, Andrew. This is more for Chris or Chuck. I'm well aware that you're applying to IFA for tax credit financing for this project. Is it critical that we consider zoning before you file that application? Does it count in scoring?
It does not count in scoring. It is not mandatory. But the last thing that we would want to have happen is what happened with another developer last year, where they received an award from IFA, and they went back and then did not receive the zoning, and then had to give the funds back to IFA. Not only is that bad for the community, it's bad for the developer.
Thank you, Mr. Ailes. Any other discussion?
So there's a lot of things that have to happen for you to be able to get this to go through. You're applying through IFA, the tax abatement, the rezoning, the re-engineering of the drainage, and to be able to get all of those things basically in line and then be awarded. Because if you do all of those other things and then in the end you're not even awarded, this rezoning doesn't even happen. It won't even be needed.
It reverts back to R3.
It reverts back to R3. And then we come back through just our study that's basically telling us that we need to have more homes, that more people are working outside of our community because we need more homes. So I'm challenged by many of what you say and many of the things that are balancing the homeowners and hearing your needs as well too.
Mr. Kaufman?
But I think it is a better, go ahead.
I guess to your last point, I would remind the council and the public, one of the benefits of senior housing of this nature is that it tends to not only address the need in the community for senior rental housing, but it will also free up entry-level housing throughout the community as retirees sell their homes and move into those apartments. And so I like to refer to it as a double bang for your buck with this program.
And the change of the neighbors, it's difficult. Even if we were to vote on this, it doesn't mean that we're going to have that. And I would like to hear more from you guys as we continue to propose this. And if we vote on this today, that doesn't mean that it's complete. So.
Yeah, actually, there's 2 or 3 more
steps.
passes at this. I think they. I'm seeing
I
some
understand.
nodding.
Last time you
understand
applied, you didn't get it either, my understanding too, correct? So there's multiple contractors and multiple people that are applying, so I think it's a good thing for the community, and I understand the challenges, but I would still want to hear from the neighbors if that's possible.
Yeah, just to reiterate, we're only voting on changing the zoning from R3 to RL. We're not approving the development plan. So he has to come back with a finalized development plan, I think to P&Z first, and then that has to come back to council for approval.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we're not voting on the development plan tonight.
Mayor, council, what you are voting on the RL. You're also approving the outline development plan, which is what's submitted to you. And so what that is essentially the type of development that you're going to approve. Then the next time around is what, the fully fleshed out plan doesn't meet what you approved with the outline development plan. So essentially what you're doing, you're giving your blessing to go ahead and develop those final plans with this. What about the drainage and all that other stuff? The drainage, that's what comes in. That comes in this final. In the final one, okay. Right. Okay.
Thank you. Did Mr. Kaufman, were you wanting to say something?
I'd like to address the.
You'd need to come up if you could, please. We're not in any hurry.
I hope
name's Max Kaufman. I live at 1609 Foster Street, Muscatine Hollow. Mr. Spread kind of kicked a quail out of the brush here, just briefly there. Did you say that they're going to get a tax break in all of this?
Okay, they've applied for tax credit financing through the Iowa Finance Authority.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a statewide program.
All right.
In addition to which is a TIF or tax abatement that we've offered here.
We're going to be coming back with that discussion next week. What we've put forward and discussed with both options. Our current recommendation was tax abatement, but we continue to flesh that out.
Without the tax credits issued at the state level, this isn't going to happen.
Right. So then, my question is, then, as the council or the city, are you going to put pressure on the project manager here then to hire local folks, local contractors, local laborers, local everybody, as much as absolutely possible to be employed on this project? Because if we're giving these folks a tax credit out of our pocket, then we ought to be employing our folks from our community by this company. Do you agree with that, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman.
Yes, I can tell you as a kid that grew up in Muscatine, and I consider Muscatine my hometown, we will do everything that we can to hire local contractors on this job. I'm committed to that.
Thank you, Mr. Ailes.
Thank you.
Hearing no other discussion,
Oh, we have Mr. Jens.
please come up.
I just wanted to comment on the getting 2 bangs for your buck that Chris mentioned. We'd do the same thing if we put condos and single homes in there. Those people would be moving into those condos, those smaller homes, out of bigger homes, probably even in the Par 4 edition, because we like our neighborhood. And that would free up those homes for those other people that have young families and they need a bigger house. So the bang for buck approach goes that with us too. And we are all aware of the shifting, having more green space in our backyards, and it's, you know, I'm adjoining too, but that doesn't concern me as much as having rentals versus home ownership. And you mentioned about home ownership and not knowing how they're going to take care of the house. They own the house. They're in a nice neighborhood. They're going to take care of it. They're going to cut their grass. You know, to think people aren't going to take care of their homes, as you mentioned, Alan, you know, you don't know how they're going to take care of their home.
That's correct.
What I think
That's
what they
throwing a
were trying to
negative.
explain, Mr. Jens, was just because it's zoned R3 now, single home residential, doesn't mean that a developer couldn't build 48 single homes
Absolutely.
and rent them.
Very doubtful.
I understand, but it is a possibility is what they wanted you to
I'd
realize.
say that's about a 0 to 1% chance. You know, nobody's going to build those homes and rent them out.
Sure.
That being said, you know, we're so much against this as a group, and we just think it's a better fit as homes versus apartments.
Thank you, and thank you for coming down tonight. Any other discussion? Hearing nothing. Councilman Spread, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilman Raywalt?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Natvig?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
Motion carries with all ayes. Moving on to 11C. Tonight we have a resolution approving the proposed annexation request from White Distribution and Supply that we just did the public hearing on. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution as submitted?
So moved.
Bill? Alan, do you want a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Councilman Spread, how do you vote?
Aye.
Saucedo?
Aye.
Harvey?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Natvig?
Aye.
And Raywalt.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. 11D. Tonight we have a request to authorize the audio upgrades for the council chambers. Presented for City Council's consideration is a request to approve audio upgrades for council chambers, and staff is recommending approval of option number 3 in the amount of $2,581.81 for a Microflex table mic that has the movable, programmable base and can be programmed to mute, on, off, or push to talk. The mic is industry standard and can be turned up louder before receiving feedback. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. Moving down to the end of our agenda, communications from council members. Councilman Natvig, do you have anything tonight?
Just one thing, the public safety open house is
12 to 3.
Saturday?
12 to 3? Sunday.
Sunday. Sunday from 12 to 3 at the Public Safety Building.
Correct. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Raywalt?
Just one clarification, are we going to address Mr. Zimmerman's problem the same November meeting that we're addressing?
I'm going to catch Brian when he gets back next week and have a discussion on, do you know if it's in the CIP?
I don't want to
This
see
area?
Mr.
I
Zimmerman
don't think so.
on another list. We want to get it, you know, let's get you. Yeah.
I'll catch Brian as soon as he's back next week and have a discussion.
Great.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Councilman Harvey?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Councilman Saucedo?
Just leaf pickup is coming up in the next couple weeks, so be aware that you'll be paying attention to that on the city website, mid-October. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman Spread?
Nothing this evening, Your Honor.
Phil? Councilman Fitzgerald?
Nothing at this time, Your Honor.
Staff?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
And I don't have anything tonight either. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned.
Blue shirt. Thanks.
Triple orange thing.
I didn't write down.
Pardon me?